Welcome back to the channel. Something I'm just gonna go through live and explain how to become a better wingman in Falcon BMS or DCS or anything along those lines of a, a tactical air combat simulator. So with BMS, pretty sure most of you have been to this website before. If you haven't, falcon-bms.com. That's where you download it. I'm not going to go over that. There's plenty of videos on how to download it. But for BMS, it's good to know where the forums are. So you go to this website, go to the forums. Here you are at the forums. I would highly recommend making this a bookmark. It's my bookmark. And this is all the different things about this. I'm not going to go over everything. But the biggest thing, how to become a good wingman, is to know your aircraft. So knowing your aircraft and a whole bunch of other things gets that out the way. So I'm going to go over the 5 factors how to become a good wingman. Number 5 will be understand your aircraft and its systems, as we're going through here with the manuals. Number 4, if possible, fly with the same flight lead. Number 3, ask questions. Number 2, work as a team. And number 1, you'll have to watch that at the end. But they're all very important. They're not really in any certain order, but they're all important, and you need to know them to have a good experience in aerial combat. So number 5, understand your aircraft systems and do your reading. So these manuals they weren't made for the health of the devs. So you need to read these and understand your aircraft so you can have a better time in the pit, because it's hard to teach someone during a mission. So you could download any of these as weapon and avionics, as BMS training, technical manual, BMS. It's all these manuals here you can get on here. And also, if you've already downloaded BMS, it's included in BMS. So you go to your Falcon BMS install folder, go to docs. All of them are right here. You have the input devices, F-16 checklists. The checklists are here because it's only with 3.5 maps, other documentation, real manuals. Like these two are good to read. But I'm gonna quickly go over the -1. We always call it the -1. So here's the -1, and this is with 3.5, but 3.6 it works as 3.6 as well. So you need to be very familiar with all of these things. So there's plenty of videos. The training manual helps as well. Let me pull up the training manual. So there's training missions, there's training manuals, there's videos. There's no excuse not to know something of the aircraft. You can probably type in your question and put BMS at the end, and the answer will be there. So you need to know your aircraft, because there's no time to teach someone when you're in the middle of a grinder trying to defend 4 or 5 or 6 Su-30s and trying to bomb a airbase with SA-17s. Like there's no time for that. So it is on the wingman. It's the wingman's job to learn as much as they can if you're going to try to get into a real mission. And there are points where you have a mission that's specifically for training, and that's fine to not know stuff, but at least know what everything is called. Like at least know where all the buttons are, because it gets really hard when you're trying to explain something to someone when they don't know where everything is. Like, oh, it's the outboard switch second from the end, like the left side, and it's like it's too much. So you need to be able to at least know which panel is which, and it says it right on the end: audio 2, ECM, AVR, aux comms, external lights, manual trim. As the left aux console has your EW system, the countermeasure dispenser, and the head-mounted display down here. You got the gear, left MFD, right MFD, ADI. Like you need to know all of these things, at least in the general area where they are, so you could look when the person that's training you could show you in the right direction. Avionics power, like all that stuff is very important. So please understand all of this, because it'll make it a lot easier for you and the person teaching you. When someone puts up a mission, they invite you to a mission. Sometimes it's on the spot, sometimes it's in ahead of time. So if you can, always try to find out what the mission consists of. So you can either ask them what the mission consists of. If you're going to go into a strike mission, make sure you know how to use your bombs. If you're going to go into a escort mission or escort role, make sure you know how to use AIM-120s in the dynamic launch zone. Make sure you know how to do the mission that you signed up for before the mission actually happens. So if you have to go into single player, get into dogfight module and shoot off some missiles, something. Like you can't just be like, oh yeah, I've never done strike before, but here I am. So you gotta just know and understand at least a little bit of what the mission is going to happen. And if you could try to get sometimes there's briefings, sometimes there's a whole slideshow of stuff. So make sure you read over it and understand everything that's going to happen. And on the other side of this, as the flight lead, for the flight lead, it's always good to trust your wingman knows how to use the aircraft, because you don't want to have the flight lead give the wingman something and the wingman's just silent and doesn't do the thing they're told to because they don't know how to do it. So being able to operate the aircraft is about 70% of the battle when it comes to BMS or any type of aircraft uh, combat situations. So if you know your aircraft, you have about 70% of the battle already done. With the wingman knowing how to use the aircraft, it makes it really easy for the flight lead because they're very busy and they don't have time to teach you how to use a system on the aircraft. So read the manual, be self-sufficient, and make sure you know how to troubleshoot some problems if they shall arise. So as number 4, make sure, if possible, you fly with the same flight lead, because if you fly with the same flight lead, you both kind of get each other's habits. You kind of start reading each other's minds. You know what their expectations are. The standards are established, and you kind of know and understand what they want before it needs to happen. So flying with the same person makes it easier to learn their expectations. It's easy to form good habits depending on your teacher. Usually, if someone starts teaching, it's usually a pretty good habit to do that in BMS. Also, you start to develop anticipations towards one another, the reading of the minds, if you will. You develop a bond and predict what the other one wants and needs. So as a flight lead, that's like the best thing ever. When you're in a grinder and your number 2 turns hot when you're turning cold, and it's just like this nonverbal communication. They know when and how to do something before the flight lead has to tell you anything. Micromanaging as a flight lead is like the worst thing ever. When you micromanage as a flight lead, it decreases the capability of the flight lead because he's basically flying 2 aircraft at once. So humans don't have the brain power to fly 2 aircraft at once, and the other wingman needs to be able to fly their aircraft on their own. I have personally had a few flights where the flight lead, well, I was a flight lead, and my wingman, I was a flight of 4. So all of my wingmen were pretty on point, been flying for about 3-4 months now, and the bond is already there, and anticipation's already there, and it was like one of the best and coordinated flights I've ever been in. And in a 4-ship flight, you want to have your number 1 and your number 3 as the 2 most experienced folks in the flight. So a flight is 4 people. It is not 4 individual people. It is 2 people with their wingman as an extension. So 1 and 2. 1 is the flight lead. 2 is the extension of 1. 3 is the element lead. 4 is the extension of 3. If your mindset is of that nature, it makes it a little bit easier to lead a flight of 4. You can have 3 do stuff. You can have the second element do stuff. So 1 doesn't have to worry about everything. And now for the next one, number 3, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. It might be embarrassing, but the only dumb question is the one that's never asked. So I would rather you ask the flight lead a question rather than not do whatever you were asked to do, and then whatever the consequences happen after because you didn't want to ask a question. So it's all about learning, and you can't learn off a question that's not asked. So if you ask a question, someone else might have the same question. 3 people might have the same question. It might spin into another question. So questions kind of like they spark other questions that other people might have as a unknown to them, because you don't know what you don't know. So it's the unknowns that get people. Ask and just verify. Sometimes it could be a little bit too much. If the flight lead went over the entire briefing, he talked about everything, and at the end you literally ask him to repeat everything, then that's kind of annoying. During the briefing, have the flight lead go through the entire briefing at least once before you start asking questions, so that it doesn't prolong the flight briefing, because it's always important to get up as soon as possible, because sometimes sometimes the briefings can last a little bit longer than you want to. Also, with the things that you don't know, reading the manuals help that as well, because you just go through the manual, you read things, you just learn it without even looking for something. Just randomly open up the manual, go to page 69, and or whatever page you want to go to, and just start reading it. You might learn something. Also, to get a better understanding of tactics, you could ask why things are done. So instead of, oh, we're going to go into a line abreast, and it's like, okay, cool, you go into a line abreast, and you don't really know why, that kind of gives you that unknown understanding of why we would want to go line abreast. And understanding those whys gives you a better feel of why we are doing something. Going line abreast, going wedge, going spread, or going trail along those lines. Also, during the debriefing, make sure you deep dive into TAC view. Ask questions why something was done as well. So if you see something you're not sure why the flight lead did that, just ask them, why did you do that, or why did you have the the thought process, like what was going through your head during this time. That kind of helps people as well, because when people go through something and they never had this experience before, they're not sure what to think. So knowing what someone else is thinking can kind of help in those thinking processes and make a decision for yourself. Always have an itch to learn something new. So you should be flying or as much as you can, and every time you fly, try to learn something new at least once during that time. As a flight lead, it's always good to see the wingman wanting to learn something new. It's just a good feeling that the flight leads get when the wingman is committed and wanting to learn more about the aircraft and tactics and how things should be done. We've all heard this before. Work as a team. Teamwork makes the dream work. That's pretty classic. And working as a team, you all need to be on the same page. So that's where questions come in to play as well. So if you're unknown about something or unsure about something, ask questions and know what the lead expects from you at most times. If you do something wrong, don't. The flight lead's not gonna get mad at you and kick you out of the flight or whatever. Just kind of do what you think should be done. As it comes with experience, but all of that comes with asking questions. Adopt, listen, process, and anticipate the mentality. So you gotta adopt whatever the flight lead is doing, and that comes from understanding why the flight lead is doing something. This also comes with experience and to be able to anticipate what the lead wants. So that comes with experience with other leads. You'll get all these different experiences and you'll kind of understand why the flight lead turned off cold when he didn't have a shot, or why did the flight lead have number 2 continue, or why did the flight lead have 2 turn cold, and many other things that could come into play. Usually the number 2 has the lowest, or the wingman have the lowest SA, situational awareness. So the flight lead has to sometimes save them if they're going hot for too long, didn't turn with the lead or something. Sometimes number 1 has to tell one of the wingmen to turn off cold because they're not paying attention. They're fixated on something. So that sometimes happens as well. Try to anticipate what needs to happen next. So if you're fencing in, you see something on the radar and RWR, and there's getting bullseye calls, and your flight lead's doing something, you need to start sorting yourself as the wingman. So the wingman should have a target locked and getting ready for that combat mentality. Instead of having the flight lead give them permission to shoot, give them permission to fire, find the target, like you don't have time for that. The wingman needs to be able to sort by themselves by a standard that your briefing has entailed. So sort by the standard and just kind of get a lock on whatever you're targeting and monitor it in time. And the flight lead will do the same. Hopefully, there's 2 targets and you both shoot at the same time, and that'll be very ideal if both aircraft shot at the same time. With that being said, understand what the lead wants you to do next. Not try to wait for instructions. So anticipate what needs to be happening. You're going to a fight, you fence in, there's bandits, you need to anticipate what needs to be happening next. If the lead is targeted on a contact and you only see one contact, start looking for other contacts behind, to the left, to the right of the first contact there, looking below the first contact, like looking around to see if there's anything else. The flight lead is doing the same thing, but they're focused on the contact that's right in front of them. So you need to sanitize the area as well. Unless the lead tells you to lock, and target this, and then they'll do the sanitation. If able, listen to the bullseye calls, so get that mental picture of where everything is, so you understand when the flight lead might do something. So you be on the same page as the flight lead instead of just following the flight lead blindly. So it's always good to listen to bullseyes and look out for groups on the FCR and the HSD to find out your where the targets are. And number one, the most important thing as a wingman is for you to stay with your lead. So visual or sensors, or tie with your lead with the radar if it's cloudy of some sort, it's IFR conditions, and make sure you're tied with your lead, either radar or the TACAN. The TACAN is like minimum. Like you need to have TACAN on. If you don't have TACAN on, you're wrong. The wingman responsibilities, understanding the sortie procedures that was briefed by your SOPs in your squadron or before the mission at hand. So the wingman responsibilities, make sure that this is briefed, or if it's not briefed, sometimes it depends on the level of your flight lead, but usually by default, the number one and number one will take the leader, so the leading flight, no matter which side it's on. If this is the case, and you know that the leader is in front, or the leader is leading, number one should take the leader. Number two, if you would like, you could switch over to the other side to take the trailer and organize it azimuth wise, because you don't want to shoot over your lead. That's not usually a good thing. So by range, the lead will take the leader, number two will take the trailer, and with the anticipation, once you come up to a situation like this, number two should automatically start looking at the trailer, and lead would look at the leader. Azimuth is easy if you just go to the person right in front of you. So if this was the case, the lead could say sort azimuth, and that would kind of switch it up. Two would get the right side, one would get the left side, but usually the leader is given by the lead. Azimuth is your corresponding side, so you got one and two. One takes left, two takes right. If it's switched, two would take left, one would take right, and it's pretty easy to understand. Elevation, usually the lead takes the high one, number two takes the low one. That's usually standard, and if it ever comes down to that, it's the flight lead would sometimes sort high. He would say lead sorted high, or number two would say two sorted low, and you just take the opposite person. That's usually a standard. It cuts down on the amount of communication needed during that 40 miles or so of sorting out targets, and it makes it really simple, and it makes it very smooth to be able to sort out targets and get something done. So spiked is air-to-air or surface-to-air radar running receiver indication that a air threat is in track or launch. So usually in the air regime, spiked is that the target or the whatever is targeting you, the Su-30 or F-16, is spiked you. So it's a hard lock. I think most people usually go after. So it's a hard lock. So that's what spiked means. You have this loud noise in your headset, and you know that you're being spiked. Nails, on the other hand, it's in search mode, so it's just out there. It's not locking onto you. It's not targeting you. It's just out there, just emitting. So nails in a direction, you could say nails 30 north, and everybody knows what you're talking about. If you get too mixed up, it'll be very confusing for everybody, because nails and spiked are two different things and two different mindsets. And please do not get these two mixed up, because nails is like, oh, okay, he's out there. Spiked is like, he's close. I'm being targeted. I need some help. So don't get those mixed up. So I hope you learned something. Hopefully it put that fire underneath you to read the manual or read different things. If you have any questions, comment below. I will be happy to answer your questions, give you any documents that is needed. Usually you can just find it on the internet. But as always, try to learn. We want all the pilots to have fun, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.